Well, again, Bianca, thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You
Looking
bet.
forward
So,
to it.
absolutely, me too. So, before we get into your work, I want to know this. I always ask this as the first question. 5 years ago, this pandemic changed so much about our lives. How did you make it through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach work today?
The pandemic was actually the start of my career. For a lot of people, the pandemic was absolutely brutal. And it was for me too. I mean, significant mental health challenges and so on and so forth, living in my parents' home. But the pandemic is actually when my business partner, Amelia, and I started our organization, Evolve Ventures. So we had like just started our podcast. And I think like 2 weeks later, shutdown happened. So we made the decision, like we were planning on going completely virtual at some point, anyways. So we just went completely virtual at that point and then started our organization from there. So it was brutal
Yeah.
in so many ways, but we did what we try to do best, which is make something really empowering and meaningful from that experience.
It's interesting because in life, half of the trick is timing. And I hear
Mm,
so many stories during the pandemic that serendipity happened because things just happened and fell into alignment. And it sounds
yeah.
like that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it was fate. I don't know what it was. I'm not a super like religious or spiritual person. I mean, I'm a spiritual person, but not
Yeah.
like very woo-woo spiritual. But
Yeah.
I think I do believe it was like fate or serendipity or whatever that led us to connect and led us to start our organization the way that we did.
So let's get into your work. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day. You're in a school,
Perfect.
and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer them?
I help people repair and rebuild the relationship that they have with themselves through therapy and through CBT therapy specifically.
So, what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job?
I actually wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And and the reason I wanted to be a lawyer was because everyone said I argued a lot and had a big mouth. So so I was like, yeah, okay, why not? I like to argue. But I actually realized I wanted to be a therapist after my own initial therapy experience. So I went to family therapy with my family after just years and years and years of turmoil and a really disruptive relationship that we had. And they didn't stick with it. They went to one therapy session. They said, this isn't it. But I stayed. And after that, I was like, I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. I've always been a very existential person. I've always been somebody who had really big feelings and connected with people deeply. And after that therapy experience, I knew that that's what I needed to do in the world. And that's what I was here for.
So, what was it about your childhood that gave you these building blocks to want to help others? What was it specifically that made you even wanted to get into law? Because there's a part of law where you're wanting justice, you're seeking a better life for people. What were those tenets that were ultimately planted that grew into who you are today as a professional?
Mm. I grew up in a family with parents who sincerely did the best that they could, but it wasn't enough. They did what they thought was best, but we were very emotionally unnurtured. um they had no understanding of what it meant to really like emotionally cultivate a child. And growing up in a very Middle Eastern household, there was a lot of there was a lot of expectations and understandings of the type of person you were supposed to be. And I was a rebel through and through from the youngest age. I grew up feeling like I don't belong here. Like something isn't right. I'm not who you guys are telling me I'm supposed to be. And so because I rebelled as much as I did against it, it ended up causing a lot of turmoil in the home. I ended up developing borderline personality disorder from a very young age because of the just chronic invalidation and the fighting and the challenges that were happening because they had an expectation of me being one way I wanted to be another, and it caused substantial clashes. So I felt so deeply, and I felt so deeply with others because of that. And I always wanted to connect with people on that deep level, especially considering I was very existential from a young age. So going through that, I just knew I have a huge heart. I have a huge passion to help people and to talk to people and to connect with people in this deep way. And then having that first therapy experience, it was like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I can do. That's how I can have these deep conversations and not get bullied for it at 12 when I'm asking my teachers like these deep existential questions and they're like, okay, go back to class. You're fine.
So what was it like when you got your first client? When you had your first foray into this career that you wanted? Was it totally validating? What was it like to be in that situation?
You know what's interesting? So the very first client that I had, it was through the pandemic. When I started my internship, everything went remote. So I had never seen a client in person until 3 years later. And then I stopped doing that and went completely remote again. First client I had, my supervisor comes up to me and she opens the file and goes, "Hey, so listen, have you read this yet?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Okay, don't be scared." And I'm like, "What do you mean, don't be scared? That's how you're introducing a client to me?" So I opened the file, and this client had been in prison for 20 something years due to arson. He set a house on fire or something like that. He had been severely abused from the time that he was a child, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, everything that you can think of. And he spent his entire life in prison. So he gets out of prison. He's like 50 something. He has no idea how the world functions. He didn't have access to the internet. He didn't know that we now have iPhones. Like
Wow.
he was in prison for all of that. And he was very emotionally stunted. So I'm like, I'm an intern. You're giving me this client? Like, in what universe is that a good decision? And it ended up being the best experience I think I ever could have had because I was just thrown into the deep end.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to use all of these tools and these awarenesses that I was learning in my program and apply it to him. And by the time he and I finished working together, because I had transitioned to another organization, he was a radically different human being. He was able to live on his own. He got a job. He wanted to be a mentor to young kids who had experienced severe trauma. Like his entire life changed. And that was insanely validating to me of we're all just people. We're all suffering in our own way. And sometimes we just need someone who's willing to listen and not judge us to be able to make some sort of change.
I would imagine getting into this line of work during the pandemic too. There was this new renewed light on mental health.
Mm.
But also on the same token, it was probably a deeply intense time for people because we were in isolation and so much uncertainty politically, socially, otherwise was going on in the world. Was that something that was kind of bittersweet? There was more of a alignment the humans were trying to, because there was this whole idea, especially when Robin Williams committed suicide, that everybody was like, oh well, why can't people just get over it, right? That's the thing that people say about depression and mental health. But I noticed during the pandemic time and even now, it's taken seriously. It's like a broken arm. It's like an ailment. So did you notice that as you kind of walked into the pandemic?
I think it was a necessary evil that had to happen. I obviously don't believe that the pandemic was a good thing. There was so much destruction and turmoil that happened, but it also finally sparked change
Hmm.
in so many areas. I mean, business is radically changing now. The way that just so many systems and ecosystems are radically changing, and the mental health ecosystem and the mental health field is one of them. People stopped having their vices. People stopped having escape from the real problems and challenges that they were facing. They couldn't just go to dinner every night anymore. They couldn't go to the movies or go on trips or whatever to run away from their problems anymore. And a lot of people, unfortunately, were stuck at home with their abusers. I mean, the amount of suicides that happened during that time, the increase in mental health challenges, like not just challenges, but the increase in rates due to no longer being able to avoid the amount of domestic violence that happened during that time was substantial. It had increased significantly because people couldn't run away anymore. And I think once people stopped having the ability to run away from what was really happening, it was like, oh, yeah, I should probably talk to somebody about this because this isn't sustainable.
So, when you look at your career arc, who's been that ultimate inspirational force, that hero for you that's allowed you to find your footing?
There's two mentors that I've had that radically changed my life. One of them is my business partner, and the other one is her partner who I helped set up together. So his name is Alan, and my business partner's name is Emilia. They are two of the most just extraordinary humans you'll ever meet. Like their sole purpose for being alive is making this world a better place, and getting to work with them and be a part of this organization where we're sincerely trying to make a difference in this world and help people change their mental health and evolve and grow. It's opened my eyes to so much. I mean, so much of the turmoil that I was struggling through, so much of the problems and challenges in the world that I wasn't aware of because my world was this small because of what I had grown up in. And it just allowed me to see the world and other people in such a different space and to believe that I was capable of making a change in that and being an agent of change in that.
So you're on the forefront of watching your clients transform into completely different humans and doing
Mm-hmm.
things that they never thought they would do, like your first client. So I'm curious, if you could meet one person alive on the planet that has been inspirational to you, that's overcome a lot, that might help you on your journey with what you're doing. Is there anybody alive on the planet you would love to ask some questions, hang out with, that might help you?
It's a really good question. I don't know.
Okay, that's an
The
answer.
the only the only person that I could think of is Tony Robbins, just because
Yeah,
of the amount of just how much good he's done for this world. But honestly, I'm more excited by the work that we're doing
yeah,
and my business partner and my mentor, Alan, because they're very much like him. So I kind of get to have that conversation every single day when I talk to them and when I meet with them.
yeah. So, how do you protect yourself with all of the things that your clients bring to you? You have to swim through some darkness. You obviously have your life that from early on that you have to, resolve and take care of, because there's
Mm-hmm.
never an end to any of it. So ultimately, how do you do that? Operate at a high level to help your clients, take care of your soul and your life. What's that energy every day for you?
Getting my own therapy.
Yeah.
I am very much, I will die on this hill. I believe that you cannot do effective therapy if you're not getting therapy. And I think that a lot of people are having a disservice done to them because providers do not practice what they teach. And I never wanted to be that. Because I grew up with people who literally lived by the mentality, do as I say, not as I do. I was told that every week. And it's like, but you're doing it. So why wouldn't I do it?
Uh-huh.
And that really instilled a it instilled this mentality within me and this just persistence of I don't want to be a fraud. I want someone to work with me and to know with 100% certainty she's doing the work too. So I can believe her. when she says this is going to suck, but you'll get through it, it's not just coming from the literature, while that's also valid and credible, but it's coming from lived experience. So I am very much of the mentality that if you want to do effective work, you have to get effective work done. And that's what I've been doing. So I had that therapist at 16, and then I stopped working with her, went back another time. I had another therapist after that. And now I've been working with a therapist and with coaches for the last 7, 8 years.
So the interesting thing about therapy is the number one thing that humans have to come to grips with is that we have to get out of our own way. We are the hardest on ourselves. So in
Mm-hmm.
all of your years of study and working with clients, why do you think that psychology is so prevalent? Because you would assume it's something else. You would assume there's a traumatic incident, there's other people in your life, but it usually when you boil down all the parts of our chemistry, it's us. Why do you think that is?
Because of the way that our brain makes meaning about things and then what we do in response to that. So I'll give you a perfect example. My siblings and I technically grew up in the same home. We didn't because our parents reacted to us very differently. But on the surface, someone would look at it and say, well, you guys grew up in the same home. Why did you end up so differently? It's because of the meanings that we associate to the things that happen to us and the way that that makes us think, feel, and act about ourselves, about others in the world. So the psychology is so critical because it shapes everything we say, think, do, feel, and believe. What we what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others, what we make that to mean about us, what we do in response to that because of the meanings that we're associating. Two people can go through a very, very similar thing and end up with wildly different outcomes. It's because of their brain, it's because of the psychology underneath it. It's because of what that event meant to them and about them, and then what they chose to do about it. So if you're not having a very deep, clear understanding of who you are, why you do the things that you do, and help being able to change it, you're going to end up stuck in the same patterns, the same unconscious, unhelpful patterns over and over again. And that's the majority of the world. And that's why the pandemic was so it was so critical to so many people finally getting help because they couldn't run away from it anymore.
The one thing I think about therapy is there's all these misperceptions that people have about it, or they don't want to do it, they're above it, all the excuses. But I think
Yeah.
too, for logical, rational, intelligent people, there's this wondering of when do I get over it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just an incident, it's your life up to that point. So my question to you is this, philosophically speaking, as a mental health professional, when do you believe somebody has gotten to a point where they're over it, or do they continue therapy for their whole lives to because you're never really resolving 100% what you've been through. You're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of easing and finding a way to get through it. So my question is, what is your philosophy on the success of therapy for those that come to you and other therapists? When do you feel like they're at a healing point and they can move on, or is it a lifelong therapeutic journey that they're going to be on?
I don't think you have to be in therapy for the rest of your life, but I do think that this idea that you're just going to be fine someday is a nice story we've all been sold because it's easier to think that you're just going to be over it someday. The thing that I've learned from my own experience is that the more and more you grow, the more and more you heal, the more and more awareness you get, the more you look back on situations that you thought you healed from, and you see it from a wildly different vantage point. So you can see things in new ways that you never saw before. So you're constantly processing and reprocessing circumstances. Now, I think the real root of your question is, when am I going to stop suffering? When am I going to stop repeating the same patterns over and over again? If you're with a good therapist, that will happen over time. I very much believe the Buddhist phrase or the Buddhist mentality that life is suffering. Viktor Frankl is very similar in his beliefs when he wrote Man's Search for Meaning and logotherapy that he came up with. And CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the therapy that I am specialized in, is also very similar. Life is going to happen. Negative things, traumas, difficulty, pain, hurt, challenge, circumstances, they're going to happen. The goal isn't getting over it. The goal is developing the skills, the awarenesses, and the relationship to self to have that belief that I can get through it no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what happens to me, no matter how hard it is, no matter how bad it is, I can get through it. And that is lifelong. Nobody just like stamps the flag in the ground and is like, all right, I'm healed.
Yeah.
Things are great now. I
Yeah.
can do everything. It's like, then you must be God. You
Yeah.
must be omnipotent because nobody is at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should be because what's the purpose of life then if you're not going to consistently grow and grow through things and have challenge and, get that opportunity to expand? I think that's the point.
Yeah.
So when we're trying to run away from pain all the time, you're missing the very opportunities to grow and to get to experience more that this life has to offer.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that much younger version of you that wants to be a lawyer. And you walk in the room and you have kind of a coffee table book and you
Mm.
hand it to that young version of you. And your young version's kind of confused and you're like, that's how your life turned out. Would that young version of you believe it?
No, absolutely not. I think the first thing I would do if I saw that young version of me is I would just hold her and hug her and I
Yeah.
would just tell her, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I'm so sorry that you were brainwashed into believing that it was all your fault when it never was, and that nobody saw you. And she would feel so seen in that. She'd be like, wait, what?
Uh-huh.
And then once I could have that dialogue with her and I could explain to her what happened, I think she would eventually believe it because I was always searching for that. I was always searching for mentors and people ahead of me and people who are above me because I wasn't significant, I wasn't special, I wasn't talented, I was intelligent, but it didn't get cultivated because of what I went through as a kid. So I was always searching for someone or something that was going to like finally pull me out and be like, oh, okay, it was a lie. Like, this is the truth. And I think if I eventually was able to like walk her through it and show her, then she would. But initially, no, she would have been like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That's not us. That's
Uh-huh.
not me.
Yeah. So I'm curious. There's a lot of things that you're talking about growing up that I can totally see. I totally understand. And I
Mm,
think in all of our in all of our lives and our narratives, we have to rely on ourselves and do something that is fear-inducing, but we get over it. And we
mm.
find that we can rely on ourselves and we can overcome things. What was that moment for you? Maybe it was a trip. Maybe it was something that you didn't think you could do. Maybe it was anything in your life. Do you have a moment where you realized that you were strong enough and that you were you? You were uniquely you, exclusionary of your family. You were the island and you could do whatever you want with your life. Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, when I finally left. This was actually also during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, when it had initially started, this was in August of 2020. I finally, after years and years and years of saying, I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave, something's wrong, this isn't right for me, I finally left home and I learned how to live on my own and I learned how to be my own person for the very first time. And it was devastating. I mean, in most ethnic homes, women are not brought up to be independent and autonomous. They're taught to rely on their families for support. So I didn't know how to do anything. And moving out, I finally learned like what the world was like. My understanding of the world started to expand. My understanding of self started to expand. And I actually started to see and believe that I was capable of doing things that I never thought I was capable of before. So that was a really pivotal moment for me that helped me to see that I am capable. It's going to be hard, it's going to be uncomfortable. I have people I can rely on, and I can do it. I can get through this.
So, of everything that you've done and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
The fact that I have never given up on trying to make myself a better person, and that I never let go of my heart and the empathy and the love and the compassion that I have for people. I've actually used everything that's happened to me to help me be a better person and to help me serve other people and make their lives better too.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm someone who sincerely wants to be extraordinary in my own way. I am somebody who deeply, deeply cares about other people, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to reach my potential and make this world a better place, no matter what.
So let's say we get off this call and you can get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history with your own eyes. You can just watch it happen. You won't create a tear in time. Nothing weird will happen. You just get to see one thing that happened on this planet. What would you love to have witnessed with your own eyes?
I don't think this is a human history thing, but I would want to see what happened to my parents and what led them to become the kinds of people that they became, to understand them better.
That's fascinating. I've thought lately about the generation of my bloodline to go back to the very, very beginning, because there's all of this generational trauma and all of these things that get handed down that become a part of the next generation.
Mm.
And if you could just somehow go back and localize that and maybe stop it from happening, it could completely help all the successive generations. But I find those answers to be the most interesting. To go back to a younger version of a generation before and have an idea of who they are and how they operated and what they were doing is fascinating. Um, yeah,
Generational trauma perpetuates because people are too afraid to finally stand up and step up. And
yeah,
I know that's what happened to my parents. I don't demonize them. They're traumatized too.
yeah.
They lived during wartime in the Middle East. They had to escape the Middle East and come here and give themselves a better lives. My mom didn't have her dad in her life because he died when she was young, and he wasn't in her life for most of her life before that because he came here to get an education. And my dad had his own things too. And so I would want to understand them a little bit deeper, not because I would want to change anything, but because I want to make change for me and for my future, and to be the cycle breaker in my family so that no one has to go through that ever again in the future. I very much believe that trauma shapes what you do, but it's not an excuse for bad behavior, because we all should take the effort to go get help and change. And I believe that about my family, and I believe that about myself. And that's why I'm still in therapy doing the work. It explains your behavior, but it's not a justification for it.
Yeah. Speaking of therapy and doing the hard work, doing the good work, how can people reach out? How can they hire you, ask questions, any of the good business?
Number one is our website, evolveventurestech.com. All of our information is on there. You can also DM me on Instagram. That's where I'm most responsive. Evolve with Bianca.
Excellent. I will put all of those links in the show note. Bianca, thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.